Donald Trump just contacted a television network in the midst of a war, not to proclaim a truce, not to reveal a strategic breakthrough, but to breathe sweet nothings into the ears of frightened stock traders. One phone conversation, one ambiguous comment about how the Iran war is pretty well concluded, and just like that, the S&P 500 erased its losses for the day. Oil prices, which had been roaring toward $115 a barrel, unexpectedly plunged 30%. Two realities were operating on the same clock. On one side, the Secretary of Defense was telling 60 Minutes that this conflict was only just the beginning. On the other, the President of the United States was telling CBS it was very much done. One government, two entirely contradictory messages, and behind both of them, a phone discussion with Vladimir Putin that should make every single person watching this profoundly uncomfortable. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you precisely what just occurred, why the administration's own statements disclose inconsistencies they cannot conceal, and why the geopolitical ground under your feet moved today in ways most people have not yet digested. Imagine you hired a contractor to remodel your home. He tells you the work will take 5 weeks. 6 days in, he phones you and says, "Pretty much done." But when you phone his foreman, the foreman answers, "We have only just begun." Meanwhile, the contractor has been on the phone with your neighbor, the one who has been undercutting your company for years. And that neighbor is now openly proclaiming that he is going to assist the contractor think out a solution. How confident are you feeling about that renovation? Hold that thinking, because that is precisely what occurred today. Drop your response in the comments. How many inconsistencies does it take before you stop calling it strategy and start calling it chaos? Let us rewind the clock to see how we came at this wonderful time. When the United States started its military campaign against Iran, the declared aims were sweeping: overthrow the government, destroy Iran's nuclear enrichment capabilities, neutralize its ballistic missile threat, and undermine its capacity to project power via proxy forces. The schedule, according to administration officials, was an anticipated 4 to 5 weeks. The language was muscular, uncompromising, and unmistakable. This was meant to be the display of overwhelming American force that would change the Middle East. 6 days in, reality began crafting its own narrative. Iran's navy incurred serious damage. Communications infrastructure was degraded. The Air Force was battered badly. But Iran did not fall. The regime did not fold. Instead, power moved not to a moderate reformer nor to a Western-aligned politician, but to Motoa Ham, the son of the previous supreme leader, a man generally considered as even more extremist than his father. The precise thing the war was designed to prevent, the entrenchment of hardline theocratic power, happened in the first week. And then Donald Trump took up the phone. Receipt number 1, the CBS phone call. Roughly an hour before markets closed on a dismal trading day, Trump contacted CBS and talked with a reporter. His message was precisely calibrated, not for military audiences, nor for diplomatic channels, but for Wall Street. He believed the Iran conflict was very nearly complete. He asserted Iran has no fleet, no communications, no air force. He stated the United States was considerably ahead of its original time range, and inevitably, the markets reacted. The S&P 500 reversed its losses. Oil prices plummeted dramatically from their highs around $115 a barrel. As one analyst put it clearly, we all understand that Trump called so he could deliver a vague but promising comment in the afternoon to make the markets rally and erase the day's drop. The conflict was not finished. The goals had not been reached, but the stock tickers needed a narrative, and Trump provided them one. That is not strategy. That is market manipulation wearing a commander-in-chief's uniform. Receipt number 2, the Vladimir Putin phone call. Before Trump announced quasi-victory on CBS, he talked with Putin, and what occurred next should terrify everyone paying attention. Putin, according to the Kremlin readout, which the Trump administration did not dispute, shared his suggestion for how to stop the conflict fast. Putin was extremely fast to proclaim publicly that Donald contacted him and that the two of them would be working together to seek out a solution. Process that. The President of the United States, in the midst of a war, phoned the leader of a nation that has been the single largest benefactor of that conflict. Surging oil prices constituted a financial bonanza for Russia, particularly after the Trump administration had already repealed vital sanctions, enabling Russia to export oil freely. And following this phone discussion, news surfaced that the administration is contemplating easing even more sanctions, enabling Russia to export even more oil to even more markets. Russia did not fire a single shot in this fight. It did not need to. It is winning by watching, and Washington just asked Moscow to assist create the finale. Receipt number 3, the Hegseth paradox. On Friday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth sat down with 60 Minutes and offered a completely different message than the one Trump would give days later. Hegseth said, and I want your viewers to hear this clearly, this is only just the beginning. He reported 6 days of surgery. He spoke of more vessels to be destroyed, more targets to strike, and more time required to secure important waterways. He called it early. Then, only days later, the president told CBS, the war is pretty much complete. But it goes farther. The Department of Defense, which now officially calls itself the Department of War, tweeted a statement following Trump's CBS interview that read, "We have only just begun to fight." The president claims it is done. The defense secretary thinks it has just begun. The Pentagon claims they have only just started. That is hardly a communications gap. That is an administration at war with its own war. If this analysis is connecting connections you have not seen compiled in one place, you are already ahead of most people watching things develop. Subscribe right now. This issue is unfolding quicker than any one source can follow, and you need to be here when the next piece drops. Here is what makes this scenario so fundamentally dangerous. There is no strategy in this equation. There is no person silently developing networks, forging alliances, positioning for the long game. What you have instead is blunt force working without defined aims, contradicting itself publicly within 72 hours, and phoning rivals for aid. Consider what Iran's side looks like right now. Kamal Karazi, the foreign policy advisor to the office of the Supreme Leader, went on world television and gave the exact opposite of submission. He stated Iran's military is pretty formidable. He claimed Iran develops its own weapons and is not reliant on any other nation. He stated this is an existential danger to the Islamic Republic, and hence Iran would answer with full power. When questioned directly if Iran is seeking a ceasefire, his response was unequivocal. I do not see any room for diplomacy anymore because Donald Trump has been deceiving others and not keeping his promises. Meanwhile, Trump dubbed the whole battle a short-term trip during a Republican conference hosted at his own resort in Doral, where members of Congress are spending money on hotel rooms at Trump's property while Article 1 obligations go neglected. He made missile noises with his lips. He labeled the Iranian people quite nasty. He termed Chuck Schumer a registered Palestinian. He said that within a week, Iran was going to spread nuclear weapons throughout the Middle East. And in the same address, he declared, "We have to crush healthcare." That is not a wartime commander projecting power. That is a guy performing confidence as the building falls around him. You do not win a geopolitical fight by contradicting your own Pentagon, calling your rivals unpleasant, and fleeing to your golf club to create explosion noises. You lose credibility, and in battle, credibility is the one commodity that counts more than ammo. So what does this truly imply for you? Start with your gas costs. Oil surged near $115 a barrel during this fight. Even with the drop following Trump's market-calming phone conversation, energy prices remain excessive and volatile. Every dollar rise in oil ripples through transportation costs, food prices, and manufacturing. Your food bill, your commute, and your heating bills are all connected to this battle and to the legitimacy of the person professing to handle it. Then consider the 11 MQ-9 Reaper drones the United States has already lost, according to CBS News, and 2 U.S. officials with knowledge of the case. These are some of the most costly unmanned systems in the American arsenal. 11 gone in days. That is a material cost, a strategic cost, and a warning to any foe watching that this campaign is not the cakewalk being depicted on television. And contemplate the diplomatic repercussions. Israel, according to the Washington Post, is already getting apprehensive and contemplating escape routes. Israeli officials are quietly saying they are not convinced it is in their interest to fight until the government is down. The choice, Israel insists, is with Trump, and Trump has swung among many views of the conclusion. When your most key regional ally begins openly hedging, The design of the mission is already splitting. Emmanuel Macron has declared he expects the conflict to extend many more weeks. Once the coalition divides, it does not restitch itself. The fissures become the new architecture. Scenario 1. Controlled de-escalation. Trump announces victory regardless of reality on the ground. He presents the destruction of Iran's fleet and sections of its missile infrastructure as mission completed and discreetly backs away. Markets stabilize, oil prices drop down, but Iran keeps its nuclear enrichment capabilities, which it consolidates authority. The government is more harsh than before the conflict began. Russia's enhanced position, the sanctions relief, the diplomatic damage, all of it stays locked in. The banner proclaims triumph. The reality says stalemate wearing a tuxedo. Scenario 2. Escalation spiral. Iran, encouraged by discrepancies in American propaganda and evident splits in the alliance, conducts asymmetric activities. Proxy troops activate throughout Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. The Strait of Hormuz becomes a choke point in actuality, not only in theory. Oil rises beyond $150. The world economy goes into recession. Trump, driven into a position, pushes further, potentially acting on the alleged desire to attack Mojtaba Khamenei personally. Israel accomplishes the operation. And now you are not in a limited attack campaign. You are in a full-scale regional war with no escape ramp, no true alliance, and a president who promised the public it was a short-term trip. This is the possibility nobody wants to mention out loud, but everyone in the Pentagon is discreetly prepping for. Scenario 3. The Vladimir Putin realignment. This is the one that should frighten strategic thinkers the most. Trump, unable to find an escape on his own, increasingly leans on Putin to mediate a settlement. Russia, having already gained handsomely from rising oil prices and loosened sanctions, postures itself as the crucial mediator. Putin gains additional concessions on Ukraine, on sanctions, on European security architecture in return for letting Trump save face in Iran. The war ended not because America triumphed, but because Russia decided it was time to collect its due. The new geopolitical reality is one where Moscow retains more influence over Middle Eastern outcomes than Washington, not through military strength, via leverage. You do not need to fire a shot when the opposing side continues providing you the keys. The link between declared aims and actual results in this war has already exceeded the threshold of believability. The government said regime change. The regime transitioned to someone worse. The government says remove the nuclear danger. The nuclear infrastructure remains. The government claimed Project Strength. The Pentagon contradicted the president within 72 hours. The government said America first. Russia is the greatest winner thus far. Even if this conflict ends tomorrow, the lessons have already been absorbed by every country, every military, and every intelligence organization on Earth. The lesson is this: American strategic communication cannot be relied to be constant from Friday to Monday. American war intentions alter dependent on stock market performance. And as the pressure grows, the first call goes not to allies, but to Moscow. Did Donald Trump capitulate to Iran? Or did he merely admit that there was never a logical strategy to begin with? Is this managed chaos or plain chaos? And when the next crisis arrives, and it will, who is going to trust the time frame, the goals, or the promise that this time will be different? Drop your responses in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe, because the next chapter, the Strait of Hormuz showdown, the sanctions talks with Russia, the Israeli exit ramp discussions, is coming quickly. This narrative is not slowing down. Do not look away. This material contains opinion and analysis for informative purposes only. It does not represent financial, legal, or geopolitical advice. Consult certified professionals before making judgments based on this content.